Now let's consider the Antichrist, which is one of the main signs of the end in the New Testament. The name Antichrist only appears in the first and second letter of John. And there he associates it with those who deny that Jesus is the Christ and with false teachers who lead others astray. However, though the word Antichrist is not used anywhere else in the Bible, the concept appears in a number of different forms. For example, Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians speaks of a man of lawlessness. And he writes, "That day will not come unless the rebellion comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God." And Paul goes on to say that the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, and his coming will be with all power and pretended signs and wonders to lead astray those who do not believe the truth and those who have pleasure in unrighteousness. The book of Revelation also has the Antichrist in the form of the beast from the abyss, and this comes from an ancient Babylonian myth, which I won't go into to save time. But what it actually means is that in Revelation, the beast nevertheless becomes the emperor, it becomes Rome, it becomes the imperial power, manifested first in Nero, and then when the book of Revelation was written in the time of the Emperor Domitian, both of whom persecuted Christians with great bestiality, beast-like. The Antichrist myth also says that Christ will destroy the beast and the man of lawlessness. That's important. That which exalts itself against God must fall away, and any system based on injustice and unrighteousness has, I believe, its own built-in mechanism of self-destruction. We do not live in a dualistic world where evil and good are equally balanced. God is always God, and so even evil cannot thwart his righteous purpose and will. What then are we in the 21st century to make of the Antichrist and the signs of the parousia? Are we seriously to be on the alert for something which is still to come after 2,000 years and might not arrive for many thousands more, for all we know? What relevance can we give to our Lord's sayings about staying alert and looking out for the signs of his coming? I suggest that our calling is to be ready and available for the Lord who is always coming. And this applies not only to our personal lives, but also society at large. The way we can be sure we are ready for the final day is to make sure we're ready to face him in all the interim days, whenever they come upon us. In biblical terms, there are many days of the Lord. But let's go further and ask, is there in our experience an earthly reality to which the visions and prophecies about the Antichrist are pointing? It's part of our fallenness as human beings that we tend to make ourselves the center of things and to go our own way. The pride that underlies these tendencies is seen as in the Bible as the desire to be as God. Therefore, put any of us in a position of power and certain dangers emerge. We're all familiar with the saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, that points to the Antichrist. However, no individual can become absolutely powerful and be as God without the support of a whole system. History has given us many examples of such systems where very powerful personalities have used their power in horrific ways. The Jews knew of Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon, and we've already noted the power of Rome and its emperors, who incidentally said that they were God. I'm getting there, brother. I'm nearly there. However, to gain absolute power, it is necessary to control people and to keep them happy, or at least compliant. Rome offered the distractions of the games, but it also used brute force to coerce and instill fear. Hitler is probably the first person in modern times to use propaganda to control people's thinking. And he would have said that a lie which is repeated often enough is soon accepted as truth. This is where the issue of deception and the lie are irrelevant in the Antichrist myth. Sadly, most modern systems of tyranny also have built in an alliance between state and religion. We witnessed this in the apartheid days in our own country, and it's very evident in the international struggle that's going on at present. Significantly, however, there was a time when the Holy Roman Empire, religion, became the power, and then it used the state for its own purposes. Not surprisingly, it was then the popes who became corrupt, many of them. So we must beware of thinking that religion is immune from the things that we are describing. I do think, like my brother has said, that we're living in a moment of crisis, and that things like pollution of the environment, global warming, climate change, HIV and AIDS, widespread terrorism and violence, drug abuse, overpopulation, greed, the growing sense of economic uncertainty, together with a general decline in faith and morals, all suggest that we are now in one of those days when the ultimate issues of good and evil are at stake. Certainly through globalization, technology, the power of the media and the current economic system, there's more opportunity to become absolutely powerful. But does this mean that we are at the end of things and that they're now upon us? I would be hesitant to say so. I think that we may be facing a day of the Lord, but not necessarily the last day. The end is not just the end of the story, it's the whole point of the story. It's the moment when everything falls into place, when truth is known at last, when evil and sin are seen to be finally vanquished, and when all of life is seen to have had meaning. Supremely, it's the moment when God is manifested in all his glory and majesty. No wonder the early Christians would often cry out, Maranatha, come, Lord, come. In order to keep this short, I've not actually spoken about the modern state of Israel, because I do not believe it is a sign of the times. So you can query that when we go into debate. You will also notice that I've been careful to speak about the end of all things and not the end of the world, because I don't think they're the same thing. There is a difference, and therefore we need to ask, what is it in modern cosmology that has relevance to the debate that we're having tonight? Thank you. We may be living in a day of the Lord and not necessarily the last day. See, I'm working from the perspective that there be many days of the Lord. And I want to come to it, that question, in the bigger way of asking about cosmology. Where does what we're talking about in this world, which is a very small planet in an enormous universe, where does that fit in to what we speak about? Because we're not really talking about the end of the world, we're talking about the end of all things.
Well, I did make a distinction between the end of history and the end of the world. A very clear distinction between the two, and suggest that the historical process was one which witnessed a continuous rivalry between truth and falsehood, and that the historical process cannot end without the final conclusive triumph of truth over falsehood. We believe that that moment will come, that decisive moment would come, as the Quran says, with Jesus, with the return of the Son of Mary, who is the true Messiah. And that when he returns,